Hey guys, welcome back. I wanted to make a recording, um, just kind of evaluating this video from the CEO of Netflix, talking about family versus talking about operating a company as a family versus a pro sports team. I see this come up all the time on LinkedIn, and so I wanted to play this for you guys. I'd love to see your take in the comments, but I wanted to share some thoughts on this from my perspective as it relates to entrepreneurs starting out. So here we go. I'm going to start the recording.
Sure. The classic, well, it's probably not for you guys, but it used to be a classic metaphor for companies was the family, and you'd hire them and you'd be like, we're a family, we look after each other. And it's kind of baloney because, you'll lay someone off in a way that you wouldn't, your sister. And so, it's like you want them to work for you like they were a family member for free and cheap. But you're not really prepared to treat them like a family member, if you're honest.
So I think number one, for me personally, I have two issues with that. Like number one, I would never hire my family for free and cheap. Like I don't know many people that would hire their mother or their sister or whoever and not pay them or treat them well. I think that's really bizarre, a really bizarre statement to make. I also think the other thing is everybody has different relationships with their family. I'm known to cut people off, like not conversationally, but just like out of my life. Like if people aren't adding value, or they're constantly taking value away, or they're constantly negative or whatever, like I will remove myself from those situations with people. It's not because I don't love them. It's because I have a place that I want to go in life, and there's people I want to help, and like I don't need to be dragged back down. So there are two things I just wanted to point out on that. Like if for me, I don't have a problem letting anybody go. Like, if someone's not cutting the mustard, it's not like it shouldn't be a philosophical debate. If people, the reality is, as an employee, someone's got to pay for your seat. If you are not making more than your seat is worth, there's going to be problems eventually. So just my thoughts on that so far. Okay, let's continue.
And so, really, the professional relationship is like a sports team. And if you want to win a championship, you got to have incredible talent at every position. And so we say, look, we're like a professional sport, not like your kid's soccer team, but no, like a professional sports team where we pay people well, we want them to win. And if you have one good game, bad game, you don't like lose your position. But ultimately, you're fighting for your position every year. And that
So this one's kind of interesting because it's like a little bit like backpedaling. It's like uh, you have to fight for your position and all that stuff, and it's just an interesting comment to make. And the sports team thing is also interesting because there are plenty of sports teams that have someone break an arm or hurt themselves or whatever, and they still get paid their guaranteed salary, excuse me, for the rest of the year. So I also don't really understand that. And then the biggest issue that I have with this statement in general, and again, I'm coming from the place of at least specifically looking at startups. I also think there is problems with this overall. I do think that companies starting out, my bias is they should operate like a family. Your first 10 employees, like you're working 80, 60, 70, whatever hours a week, like you operate like a family. How many of you guys out there listening have ever worked at a restaurant or a brewery or a winery or whatever? Like you're there with those people all the time. You know everything about them. It operates very much like a family. And that doesn't mean that people don't get cut. Like in your family, if your mother or father or whatever don't feed you as a baby, you die, right? So there are things that family members need to fulfill. So for me, I'm like, for my friends or my family, I'm very intentional on like who I would work for. I don't take job offers from my friends lightly, or I would never just jump into a role because a friend got me in the door somewhere. Um, I think about what's the impact on that person if I do really well, or if I don't perform well. Like I want to make sure that I'm going to um, exceed the expectations that were set out for that role, so I make that person look good. And so the thing about the sports team, talking about professional sports team, and it's like you're not going to get cut. I don't think that exclusively it applies to sports. I think that could apply to families as well. And I also more specifically think like smaller companies should operate as a family. Like you should never be saying that's not my job. right? Like a quarterback is not gonna, I don't know much about sports or whatever. I used to play hockey, but a defensive person is not going to be like, oh yeah, like I need to go play offense. Like that's not their role. But in a family, if one of the parents is away, the other parent cooks for the kids. You know, someone steps in, someone picks up the slack. You hear about families where a kid, you know, so they lose a parent and some son or some daughter has to step up to provide for the family. To me, that's what a startup looks like more so in the first 10 days. Let's keep going.
That's how we feel about it. And it's, as long as we're honest about it, it's exciting because then you can play really sophisticated sports. So to do a blind pass in soccer and you just know the person's there, that's an art. You need great teammates, you know, that you are so well rehearsed. And, you know, so to do that, you need great talent, and that's fun to be around. So
Cool. So I think he ends on talking about talent and how if you know if you have like your professional sports team and you have great talent, um, character trumps talent every single time. Every single time. How many of you have heard, you know, Elon Musk or some other famous CEO talk about how an MBA or a PhD hire, like 9 times out of 10, they end up being the worst thing ever when they just hire. And I'm not saying any of you out there that have those like credentials, great, good for you. I'm glad you guys did the work, but there's a lot of people listening, and I want to talk to those people in, you know, third world countries that don't have resources to go to that level of schooling, or they don't feel like they're accomplished enough. Those things, like when you come out of school as a lawyer, you spend probably half a million, $600,000 in going to law school. Do you make 100,000 your first year? Probably not. And so it's going to take you the better part of a decade just to pay off literally what you put in. And if that's your life's mission, go ahead and do it. But I'm just saying, talent in the definition that I'm assuming it, you know, the CEO of Netflix is referring to, which is, you know, oh, they have a high pedigree. They worked at all these, you know, VC backed startups that sold for blah, 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 blah. That is a fallacy. Like, I'm not saying that grit alone is the end all be all, but the underdog story is the real deal. There's a reason that C students and dropouts end up becoming CEOs at a lot of these companies. So I just want to encourage those of you that, you know, that are in that position or don't feel like you're worthy enough, you need to really be questioning that internal dialogue and those limiting beliefs because they are total BS. Um, and so that was the last point I kind of wanted to end on, which is like, you don't need rock stars to what is a rock star, I guess, you know, in terms of what he, you know, the CEO of Netflix is talking about. I know he's talking about talent in terms of pedigree. They went to an Ivy League school, they have this background, blah, blah, blah. I think of people like the founder of Tommy John, who had absolutely zero experience in the fashion industry, had never started a company before, literally started during the recession. There was no reason that they should have been successful. They had something that's very hard to do in the fashion industry, which is a patent on underwear. And it's like, there's no reason that he was qualified to do that. But it took someone from outside of the fashion world to think of something creative, to think in a new way, which made them so great. And so what I'm saying is, I think especially for companies that are starting out, don't undervalue grit, don't undervalue operating as a team. Don't get in the habit of saying, "Oh, this is my position. You know, this is if I hurt my arm and I'm a professional sports team person, I'm just going to take the rest of the season off." You know, that doesn't work. A family, the one thing that's really neat about a family is they have all have one core common goal, and like you can ask why and why and why and get to the core of it. What is that? It's to survive and hopefully thrive, right? So every family needs to survive. It doesn't matter, you know, different people pick up the slack at different points. Everyone tries to contribute. And so I think early on, a startup is more representative of a family unit in many ways, at least the way that I interact with my family. And so I would just challenge, you know, when I hear people say that no company can operate as a family or it's so negative or it's the worst thing ever when people say that, like, I'll listen, if a family member, let me tell you guys a story. My grandmother used to work at an ice cream place that my dad used to own. And so when I was growing up, I was like one, there's like pictures of me underneath the ice cream machine, which probably explains my affinity for ice cream. But anyway, that's a side tangent. Um, where I was going with this was my grandmother, everybody pitched in to help the company because it was a lot of money. I think the interest rate that my dad had at the time was like, double digits, like 18% mortgage on this thing. And he's trying to make it successful. And they're working like 80 hours, 80, 90 hours a week. People are going to work full time and then they're going here after work. And my grandma in her whatever 70s or 80s was one of the people that worked there. And she literally either got quit or fired every other day. And so for me, I'm like, if it's not working for you as as a family member of the team, or if it's not working for them, in that case my dad, he it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter if you're family or not. You need to cut the mustard. You need to find roles that are fulfilling to you as the employee, or find roles that are fulfilling as the employer for people on your team, or that on your would-be team. And so I don't know, I hope this helps you guys.